Alrighty, what's up, guys? So today I wanted to just kind of walk through my Sprite Stack 3D engine. This is actually it's I guess more of a 2.5D engine. As you can see here, I've got a little Sprite guy, billboard, but he doesn't billboard all the way, um, zooming in and out. And it's much more efficient because it uses actual 3D, and you get the nice like kind of perspective look to it, like everything's kind of bubbled. Um, and I've got like settings and everything, and I'm gonna walk through all that in a minute. But the link for the download to the itch.io page for this will be in the description, and I'll show you what it contains: a .yyMPS file and then also a .yyz file, so you can check it out, play with it. And I tried to make it super easy to set up. I've got some post-processing effects in there just for good measure. And yeah, you'll get an example, and then you'll get this actual project, or all the backbone kind of stuff, and then this little project with these models, and it'll look like this, so you can play around with it. But anyway, let's jump on over to that. So, yeah, we've got an example. It's just got a couple objects, something that creates a bunch of like trees randomly. Nothing crazy there, and then a little player. And I've got some macros set up for camera stuff as well, like camera X, Y, Z, angle, pitch, etc. I'll show you all that in a second. And then image Z scale, X rot, Y rot, and pretty much all you have to do for billboards is there's a command called draw sprite 3D, right there, and just sprite index, image index, X, Y, Z, the X rotation, Y rotation, and then I've got image angle set for the Z rotation. And then image X scale, image Y scale, image Z scale, image blend, and image alpha. So basically just draw sprite. But you can now rotate it, all around and everything like that. If you want to get rid of all that screen stuff in the example project, it's all just in the GUI. Always make sure, though, before you draw to the GUI anytime with the system, is that you need to check that O-render exists. And then it's got a function. O-render has a function inside of it called set fog, and just set it to false and then true. If you've disabled fog, then you don't have to call this, but I have fog enabled for now. But anyway, yeah, I just got the little player character, some controls for moving around, and just some random stuff in there that you can check out and dig into. I'll probably do a separate video on how to create a project from scratch with the system. But for the most part, all you have to do is just throw this camera object in first. It always has to be the first object in the room. Anything put into the room before this camera will not be drawn. It's just the unfortunate nature of Game Maker's 3D engine. This system does actually use true 3D functionalities, but it's got some automatic kind of stuff built in. I have it set up to where it also supports OBJ files, but currently I don't have any lighting. There's some fog, and it doesn't support material files yet or anything like that. So that'll probably be updated in the future. For right now, but it is in there. So if you have a .obj, you just bring it into your included files, and then you can just right here just call the file name right there, and then it'll load it in. But these are parent objects. I've got O-render here. This is where a lot of the magic happens for creating the scene, rendering all the models, etc., etc. You can look through all this, but I would suggest just kind of leaving this alone. Just that's why I kind of put it in this back end part. Just pretty much leave it alone for the most part. You should only have to really deal with these three objects. So you just put the camera in the room. If we look at the camera, click these variable definitions here, and you've got some settings that you can set up. So target, just like what's it going to look at. I believe that either in the room or in the player create code, I have it set to where, no, I don't. But you can always do, like for your player, you could always say camera target equals ID. So there's a quick thing. So if you ever want the camera to change targets and whatever. I made a macro, so it's pretty easy to access. Anyway, you've got a target. I think I got this set in the room. When you put your camera in, just set it to O player or whatever, or you can do it within the player, doesn't matter. Then you got the field of view. I've got it set to 50, but if you wanted it, say at, like if we bump it all the way up to 90, you'll see how much different that looks. So now, like, everything's super far away, and like closer things just distort more. So you can, it's the field of view. How far can you see, from the side and in front of you and everything like that. So you can play around with that, get something you like. I've just got it set to 50. The pitch min and the pitch max. Pitch minimum is like over top, like if you're looking straight down at the player, but you don't want to set this to 0, just because of the way GameMaker 3D does with having the up vectors. If you set to 0, once it reaches 0, it will draw nothing. So I've just got it set to 1. It's such a minimal difference you won't even notice. And then the pitch maximum. So I've got it set to 50. You get some weird stuff that happens because the sprite stacks are all just planes, stacked on top of each other, and it's using true 3D methods to render these planes. There's basically infinite distance between the planes, right? So just as an example, I'll set this to 90. So that way we can turn all the way to like the floor, basically. And you'll see. So if we get down, you see that. You can see between, like, I'm still working on this, and I'll probably update a lot of this stuff in the future because I would like to get this to where you could actually, you could make a sprite stacked first person game. But what I'll probably eventually have to do is convert the sprite stack stuff to actual models, voxel models. So like instead of, if we look in here, like each pixel would just be a block instead of just like drawn on a plane. But yeah, you get some weird stuff whenever when you get too far to the ground. But eventually I would like to make it so that you could have like a 3D game or like a first, or not really, I guess you could do first person, but like I said, right now it just looks weird. So I've just kept it at 50 for most sprite stacking projects anyway. That's a good setting. Then you've got the distance. This is how far away the camera is. The zoom will affect this, but this is like your baseline distance. So I've got it 128 pixels from our target. And then the zoom in and zoom max are just they just multiply by the distance. So the minimum zoom will be 128 because 1 times 128, and the maximum zoom would be 256. So the maximum we can zoom out is 256 pixels away. So you can change all that, play with all that stuff, but that's all the camera settings. Then like I said, I tried to make it super easy. So all you have to do is throw that camera in there. And then for the rendering stuff, I've got just a little settings thing here. You can, if you look in the variable definitions here, there's a lot of stuff going on. So make this bigger here so you can actually see everything. So you can either throw this settings thing into a room. Let's say you had one room where you wanted certain settings, but then a different room you wanted totally different settings. You can always just, this is all the default settings, but you can put this object settings into a room and then go in and change all these values in that room, and it'll be those settings instead. So, but by default, the rendering object will automatically create this settings object and with all of these defaults. So, like I said, I tried to separate everything out and give you some good options to play with. So we got the FPS overlay, which is just the show debug overlay, so you can see what FPS you're running at. You can turn that on, just easily click it there. Enabling layer depth. So currently I have this turned off because you want to pretty much have everything in the world decided by the Z, like how far up and down things are decided by the Z. But if you decide that you want everything separated out by layers, you can enable this, and then in your room, open up the room here, each of these layers, like right here where it says depth, that'll be the Z. So this would be Z100 for everything on this layer, and then plus their own Z, and then instances 0, etc., etc. So you can turn that on. I just left it off. I don't see the point, since we're now in true 3D. You would just want to set everything. You just want to set a Z value to everything anyway. Got resolution. That's just like how pixelated the screen is. If you want to mess with that, model fidelity. This will hugely affect performance, but basically, one would be, well, we'll just look at it real quick. So that way I can just kind of show you. So one, you can see that you can see more of the planes, like definitions. And basically what model fidelity does is it will create planes in between all of these planes, right? So if I set it to 8, and this is probably going to, or 4, this might lag pretty hard, maybe not. So now you can see there's a bunch of tiny little planes. So looks better, but you're going to lose some performance on that as well. So just keep that in mind. I'm going to set this back down to 2. I should have it at 2. I think that's okay. Then you've got the display. So when the window width and height, that's what I've got it set to now. There's a full screen button. Just make sure that when you do click the or do use the full screen button, that you have the up here in the Windows options that you turn off borderless window, or click on borderless window. Sorry, the mouse position won't when you go to like look around with the camera, it won't work right unless there is no borders on the window. So just keep that in mind. Show cursor if you want the cursor to show. Pretty simple stuff. Then we got fog. If you've ever done anything else in any 3D, hopefully you get the idea of fog. If you don't, just play with it. Basically, it starts at 250 pixels from the camera, and then it ends 1,000 pixels away from the camera, right? And then color. Super easy. Turn it off and on. I've got shadows, turn off and on, and then this is the shadow intensity. That's just how see-through the shadows are, how dark they are. 1 would be completely black. 0.2, not so much. And then all the post-processing stuff. So depth of field blur, this is more of a tilt shift blur than it is an actual depth of field blur. Eventually I'll probably change this to an actual depth of field blur, but as it stands now, I think it's fine as just like a tilt shift, especially with sprite stacking, like looking games, so you can play around with those. Then I've got bloom and additive bloom. Just be careful with these. You might have to tweak some stuff with the bloom settings, or not the bloom settings, but bloom can tend to wash colors out, especially if you're doing additive bloom. Just something to keep in mind. But you've got that, and then the bloom amount, and then vignette, which is just the little black like darkening around the edges of the screen. So I tried to hook it up pretty simple and easy. So all you have to do is just like go in here and change some of this stuff and tweak it. And like I said, you can either put that in the room or not. So I showed you how the player sprite, how to draw sprite. You just use draw sprite 3D. But when it comes to models, all you have to do is just add this model parent here. And then realistically, I don't even have to do this. I can just let's just delete it. You could just do this, boom, and now we got some trees. And then in my little create tree event, I'm just gonna set the z ins.z equals negative image number times 0.5. So the reason that you have to set, the way I've got it set up is basically models will build from the center outwards, right? So your X origin, your Y origin, I thought it was in the sprite, would be, if this is the center, then, it's building outwards. Well, I did the same with the Z. So basically the height of your model is how many sub-images there are, right? So these trees are 80 sub-images because it's a stack sprite, a sprite stack. Therefore, I need my Z to be at negative 40. And I did that mainly so that way if you decide to rotate it around, you'll get good center rotations, because if you built it from the ground up and rotate around, then it'll, as you would expect, rotate around the bottom instead of around the middle. So that's why I did that. So just keep that in mind if your models are going through the floor or whatever. It's just something to definitely keep in mind. And then let me go through some of these macros. I've got them hidden away in here, but you can use them. Let's see, scripts. This is all the tool under the scripts. You got a toolkit script. This holds all of the stuff. Pretty much I would just ignore all that stuff, but you've got the model and drawing stuff. So these are the functions that you use to create a model. Just say model create, and you pick the sprite and set the Z, and then in the user event 0, not the draw event, but the user event 0. If we go into here, you can see user event 0. This just keeps it from doing more draw calls than necessary. There's no point in making a draw call if I'm just going to draw it, if ORender is going to be doing all the drawing anyway. So user event 0, model draw, kind of the same concept, X, Y, Z, X rotation, Y rotation, and Z rotation, which I just have by default set to image angle, X scale, Y scale, and Z scale. And then, yeah, model create, I've just got it set to sprite index. You can always change that. But this is where you'll find all the back-end stuff. If you know what you're doing or you want to look in here, you can play with some of this stuff, but just be careful. But anyway, so yeah, these are these 3 functions here, which are, let me close them out. Model create, model draw, and that's for the sprite stack models, and then draw sprite 3D. So those should be the only functions that you have to, but like I said, I've got a model parent, so when you go to create a model, you can just literally parent it, boom, you're done. And then if you want to change anything else, so yeah, like I just took all that tree stuff away. Yeah, you see how they're going into the ground? I must have messed something up. But yeah, you can see there that they're all halfway down because I need it to. Let me make sure I did this right. Negative image number ins.z. And then maybe it's negative image number. Maybe I ended up changing that. Maybe it does build from the bottom. Oh gosh, I don't want to have to debug this. Number times 2 doesn't really seem to be doing anything, does it? Oh, you know what? I know why. I've got it set in here. Bam, right there. I've got it set to 0. So I would just do inherit event and say z equals negative image number times 0.5. Or you can, if you want to go in there and you don't want that, you can just take it out on this model create thing. Just like get rid of that and just say 0, or just get rid of that and initialize it yourself, whatever. But just, yeah, sorry about that. Keep that in mind, yeah. So just inherit the event and set the z separately, because it basically, whenever I was creating it in the create trees thing, it was just overriding it with the new z, which was 0. So anyway, spent too much time on that. Okay, back to these scripts. All right, here's some macros I got set up for you. We've got camera width, camera height, the camera, which is view camera 0, X, Y, Z, angle, pitch, target, distance, and zoom. So you can always call these from anywhere in the game, and it'll just call these macros and set stuff if you want to reset stuff. This, you can ignore those colors. That was gonna be, I'll use them eventually, but you don't really need them. I'm not even using them. And then I've got some nice little display stuff set up for you if you want to use them. Display width, display height, GUI width, GUI height, window width, window height. So if you're ever drawing stuff on the GUI or anything like that, you can just always call these macros, and instead of writing all of this out. So got those in there for you. And the only shader I got is just the blur shader. It's just for, like you saw, the depth of field blur. But yeah. So that's pretty much it. Like I said, all the layers are forced to the same depth. So, oh, I was doing lights in there. I don't need that. Like I've got an asset layer that's just called ground, and I literally just it's just a sprite, right? So like I can just go in here to my sprites, sprite floor, add it in, stretch it out, and it doesn't matter what depth it's at because it's not going to draw at that layer depth anyway. So now we have just like a giant floor, and that's the nice part. You can use like tile, you can put tile sets and stuff there, so you can create whole, put your all your tile sets and create a whole little village with the dirt paths and everything, and then just put your models where you want, and it'll all draw on the ground correctly. And yeah, it's pretty nice. So yeah, like I said, I just tried to make it as easy as possible. The background color is just the sky color. If you're using fog, then you don't really, you want to make sure that your fog and this are kind of the same color, but you can play around with it. I just kind of threw it in there, but it just makes the background, that color. So, but anyway, yeah, I hope you guys get a chance to check it out. Hopefully it's super easy to set up, and like I said, I'll probably make another video right after this showing you just with all of this stuff here, just showing you how to set it up, how to set up a scene from scratch with all this stuff, and how easy I tried to make it to be. So anyway, guys, hope you guys check it out. Tell me what you think, and yeah, y'all have a good rest of your day. Peace.